third down is we've got 2 downs to get this. We're gonna run 2 plays.
And if you know you're going for it on fourth down, it opens up the playbook on third down, right?
Sure.
So it just makes things a lot simpler, I think, or it keeps your playbook more wide open if you know you got 2 downs to get it.
Let's stay on offense for just a second, because one of the other talking points during the offseason was about this rushing offense for WVU that was so good last year, leading Power 5 in rush yards. And we said, listen, there's almost no way this line can perform at last year's level when you lose a generational talent like Zach Frazier and you lose another guy in Doug Nestor that had played a lot of college football and himself is on an NFL roster. Those are hard replacements to make, especially now you see Zach Frazier walk into Pittsburgh and look exactly like he did last year. He's dominating at that league like he did here. So there was no doubt it was going to come back. The question just is, all right, what would it look like? Doesn't have to be number 1 in the country, because you think the passing offense is going to come up and get and close some of that gap. So what is the rush offense going to look like? So far, 50th overall nationally, still averaging a pretty good number, 180 yards per game, but it's not the dominant rush offense that we saw at the end of last year, where they ended up averaging 230 yards per game. So they're a little bit off of that. Last season, the 5th most rush attempts nationally. This season, 45th. Now, again, small sample size here, so keep that in mind. We're just a third of the way through the season, but that is what we thought would happen. This rushing offense still trying to find its footing and get going. It's also one of the things, if you want to try and pull positives out of this first third of the season and project forward, is you've seen West Virginia for the last 2 games really do some good things offensively, but doesn't feel like they've totally got it clicking yet, right? You saw Garrett really look like Garrett last time for the first time. Jaheim White hasn't got on track yet, right? You still feel like there's a lot of yards in Jaheim White coming. So if you're looking at this rush offense as this line continues to gel, you hope that there's still some runway and some upside for this rush offense. Moving over to the passing offense, what do they look like compared to last year? Last season, 91st in yards per game passing. They were 8.1 yards per attempt, which was up almost 2 yards per attempt from the year before. And that was a big talking point going into last season, is would West Virginia be able to push the ball down the field? Clearly they did. That was one of the best things about that offense last year. It was one of the strongest parts of Garrett Green's game were the downfield passing numbers, which we've talked a lot about. This season, 70th in passing yards per game, so up from last season, averaging 7.9 yards per attempt. Almost exactly the same where it was last year. A lot of that was aided by this last game, right? West Virginia did a great job getting the ball down the field in this last game. Here's what the biggest difference is. West Virginia throwing it for a few more yards per game to make up for that difference, where the running games come back a little bit, because teams are saying, what, Hop? Yeah. Well, you're not going to just line up and run on us. If you can throw it, throw it. So those have kind of done what we thought they would do number-wise. But here's the difference. West Virginia already with 5 interceptions this year. There's only 4 Power 4 teams that have more, and you just beat one of those teams. So West Virginia's had too many interceptions early. And that's not just on Garrett Green, by the way. We've talked about that. Interceptions are not always just the responsibility of the quarterback, right? We saw last week he got hit once as he was throwing it. So there are different factors. But for a team, that's been an issue. They've got to get that under control. Last year, just 7 all of last season. You're already at 5. So that's a part that has to get cleaned up. Speaking of interceptions, go to the defense for a second. West Virginia's 108th this season in interceptions gained. Last year, 55th. They averaged almost 1 per game last year. Remember, that was a talking point going into last season, is that group needed to create some turnovers. So far this season, West Virginia is not. Now, they did against Kansas. It's part of what led you to getting a win. You neutralized that turnover margin. That's something here over the next 2/3 of the season. Can West Virginia get better at protecting it and get better at taking it away? Because when you have a defense that is not going to stop on every down, what do you have to do? You got to get off the field some way. So either stop third downs or create some turnovers. West Virginia is not doing the latter of those right now.
Right. Yeah. That's obviously, it goes without saying that we'll be interested to see what that defensive backfield develops into over the next several weeks. Is it what it is? Is it what it is, or is it going to get better? I mean, late in the Kansas game, Anthony Wilson came over, got a pass breakup on the Kansas sideline.
Yeah.
That was like, heck, I haven't seen that before.
Yeah.
Seriously. I was like, a guy comes in, reaches in there, bats ball away. Like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
That's the way it's supposed to look. But you're right. You're not going to get picks when you don't have a defensive player close to a receiver. It ain't going to happen.
Yeah, and some of that's the responsibility of the linebackers, too, as Neil's talked a lot about, not just the defensive backfield. That whole team coverage has to get better, and that's showing up in yards per attempt. Last season, West Virginia was 80th in opponent yards per attempt at 7.4 yards per attempt, okay? This season, West Virginia is last among Power 4 teams. Opponents are averaging 9.2 yards per attempt. That's a big number. Mm-hmm. So obviously, and West Virginia knows this, they've got to cut that number down. To put that in context, Georgia Tech offense is averaging 9.2 yards per attempt. They're 20th nationally in that category. So basically, West Virginia is getting a top 20 passing offense in that category every week it goes out. That's a hard model to sustain.
Yeah. Jumping back over on the other side of the ball.
I'm sorry, one more thing.
Well, sure.
Last week, it was just 7.4 yards per attempt for Jalen Daniels.
Jumped up.
And that included some big third down conversions that boosted that up. So as Neil talked about this week, they made a concerted effort to take away the passing game last week, and it was much, much improved in that particular area.
Yeah. Jaheim White, I'll be really interested to see what the rest of his season becomes, because he has had one good game against Albany, and to this point, C.J. Donaldson's become the guy. And you don't want to say the double S word, but sophomore slump. C.J. Donaldson went through a sophomore slump. He had self-admits, I had a sophomore slump. I think this is a really good off week for Jaheim, because he's got to kind of look around and go like, okay, what do I need to do to get back to where I was at the end of last season and live up to what I'm sure his expectations are. But he has not gotten into the flow and has not gotten frothed up yet.
He hasn't, and they need him to.
Yes, they do.
That's part of the thing. When you outside look in at this team, that's the magic of it. It's that three-headed monster running the football, and they've got to have all three of those guys available and operating at peak efficiency. So Jaheim's the one you hope you can get rolling here over the last 2/3 of this season.
Yeah, and you don't know. I mean, you don't know what it is, right? I mean, why is that? Why is that?
Combination of a bunch of things, I think. Combination of a bunch of things. I mean, there wouldn't be a term called sophomore slump if they didn't exist. For whatever reason, guys that come through, or for that matter, if it's a female sport, girls that come through, like if you do something unexpected as a freshman, it also impacts all the stimulus you get around you. People patting you on the back. You think you figured it out. You think, okay, I got this done. I can do this. That's what happens their sophomore year oftentimes. And then they have to go through this low point as a sophomore, and then they build back up and they go, okay, I got it. I understand now. And then they come back and they normally have a good junior, senior year. We've seen those here. And that's, I think, he's on the fringe of having that. And it'll be interesting to see if he can do a mid-season turnaround.
It also, you're a known commodity.
Sure.
So do you think the other teams know about Jaheim White? Do they come in and game plan a little bit when Jaheim White comes in the game? You think all 11 defenders are aware that Jaheim White's in the game? Last year, I'm not sure that was the case all the time, right? There was a surprise element to that. So that factors in as well. Grades, let's look at first third of the season grades. Top 3 offensively. You want to guess?
Yeah, I'll guess.
Go ahead.
Milam, Malone.
Ooh. Does he have 2 of them?
Milam, Malone, and CJ.
Ooh, you're close. Milam, Malone, Garrett.
Okay.
How about that?
How about Nick Malone?
How about 2 tackles?
That's to me, that's the story. Milam's not a surprise. You're talking about a fringe first-round guy, potential first-round pick. Garrett Green, you knew needed to be good for this team to be good. And listen, last season gave this staff, I think, a lot of confidence in what Nick Malone could do, being able to step in like he did across multiple positions. But for him to step in and be your second highest graded offensive player after 4 games is just fantastic. And remember, that includes going against NFL guys there on that Penn State group. Both
Yes.
Milam and Malone did. I think that's incredibly impressive, certainly for all 3. But for Nick Malone to be in your top 3 through 1/3 of the season, tremendous.
Yes.
Nick is benefiting from technology. And by that, I mean this. if you didn't have the unbelievable amount of analytics and metrics that exist nowadays, all you would say is, yeah, the kid Morgantown High kid, Nick Malone, yeah, he's playing pretty good.
Starting.
Yeah, he's starting. He must be pretty good.
He's pretty good.
But you'd never be able to quantify and say, well, actually, he's playing a little bit better than good. Was he 2 or 3?
He's two. Yeah.
He's the second best graded player on offense. So the metrics and the technology now kind of can focus on it.
Yeah, it's a good point. Good for him.
Otherwise, he'd just be another kid from the high school.
Yeah, happy for him.
Yeah.
Okay, defensively, you want to take a swing defensively here at the top 3?
Trotter,
Jackson,
Carrico, Jackson, correct.
Carrico,
correct.
Anthony Wilson.
Nope. You're just not thinking of it because it's obvious.
Martin?
No. Trotter's not far off, by the way. That was a good.
Trey Lathan.
No.
Burks?
Nope.
All right, we named all the starters.
Yeah,
Who was it?
Tyron Bradley.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, right? Just coming off that unbelievable game. So, again, those are 3 guys. 2 of them, Hop, everybody gnashes their teeth about who you lose in the transfer portal.
Who do you get?
But how about that, right? Carrico and Jackson. Carrico's super important to get back. Hopefully this week off allows him to heal up and get back in this lineup because those are 3 very important pieces of this team right there. But pretty good for a top 3 right there. But Tyron Bradley's another one. We talked about him in the offseason coming off that unbelievable interception he had in the Mayo Bowl as a guy that you looked at and said, all right, what can Tyron Bradley give you this season? He's given you a lot through a third.
Gives you octopus. Yeah, that was an octopus arm interception in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Reached up and took it.
Grabbed the ball.
What if I told you in August that 4 games into the season that Ollie Gordon at Oklahoma State would be 10th in rushing among Big 12 running backs?
Well, you would say, what's wrong? He's hurt.
And that C.J. Donaldson would be above him. But here's the deal, and you'll say it.
3 sub-50-yard games for Gordon.
I'll say it before you say it. Kind of similar to last.
I know.
He was a hibernated bear early last season, and then he ran for 7,621 yards in like the last 7 games.
Almost ran himself to the Heisman Trophy. Well, he was so good after the first 3 games.
Yeah. So like they fly out of Bridgeport, right? They fly out of Bridgeport. Last time he was here, he ran to the airport.
He was already there.
He was already there when the team got there. Yeah. What are you doing? Yeah, I just ran out of the stadium.
It will absolutely floor me if and listen, last season they completely flipped their blocking scheme and what they were doing zone versus gap blocking last year after their first 3 games. They totally reinvented themselves and took off, started feeding Gordon the ball more. It will stun me and par for the course that West Virginia is getting ready to roll in here. If against Kansas State, coming up for Oklahoma State this weekend, and against West Virginia, they don't find a way to get Ollie Gordon going.
But also that defenses are saying, look, stop, do whatever you got to do, sell out, stop Ollie Gordon, see if Bowman's good enough to beat you.
Well, correct, but the counterpoint to that would be you don't think they were doing it by the end of last year through multiple games? I mean, they were, and Oklahoma State still figured out a way to do it. They're going to get back to figure it out here. They're gonna work Gordon here.
West Virginia's defense still has to face 6 of the current top 10 running backs in the Big 12 with remaining games. How about this R.J. Harvey dude at UCF?
Oh my gosh!
Well, he's running for $149 a game.
Not a surprise. He put up 1,400 yards rushing last year, so Harvey's not a surprise. One of the best returning backs in the country. Now UCF's going to be an interesting case study because their schedule is going to pick up now, but they are a team that a lot of people, me included, thought had the potential to be a dark horse in this league. They probably weren't getting enough attention. I mean, they've got dudes offensively. And KJ Jefferson coming in from Arkansas as the quarterback, if he can manage that team well, their question is just defense, and that's what it's been the last couple of years. But offensively, they've got dudes, they've got speed, and Harvey is absolutely lights out.
Yeah, that'll be fun to watch, see how that all goes. That's pretty good.
That is.
That's kind of the main
Are those
stuff.
musings? That's what we would
those
call
are some
those are
musings.
Number-based.
Musings category. That was incredibly overmodulated.
It was wild.
Since it's a live to tape show, we're not fixing it. It's a good thing Dale Miller's not around anymore. We'd be getting the grease pencils out and cutting that tape.
Start over.
Fix that again. Start the whole show over again. You overmodulated. It's all right. We're good. 3 Guys Before the Game is brought to us by Comax Business Systems. If you're a business owner, that's been putting off getting a new phone system for your biz. Incredible benefits to the technology that exists today. You just give them a